When you think iPhone, you probably think of good design, sleek glass, stainless steel, aluminum, minimalism, the colors white and black, and of course an expensive price tag. And yet, despite this, the iPhone 5C was a thing. A plastic iPhone 5 released alongside the 5S in 2013 with a variety of colors so you could show your true quirky self. It went against everything Apple typically did, well, except for the price tag. Hey, how's it going? I'm Josh from 91 Tech, and today we're talking about the iPhone 5C. How does it hold up in 2019? Many would consider the iPhone 5C a failure. Personally, I would consider it a failure if you didn't go follow me over on Twitter and Instagram at 91_tech, so you should go do that. But back to the 5C, I'd say that it's not that hard to consider the phone a failure. I've done multiple videos on this, which I'll link below, but to summarize, Apple stepped out of their comfort zone with the 5C and did something different, which was good. What wasn't good is that this was essentially a less premium iPhone 5 and cost no less than the iPhone 5 would have if it had stuck around, and the 5C didn't sell terribly well, at least for Apple. By most smartphone manufacturers' terms, it was a wild success, but for Apple, the numbers didn't match what they wanted, and as a result, the 5C never received a successor, at least until last year with the iPhone XR. While Apple never said it, it's pretty obvious where the XR's inspiration came from. It's a cheaper option made with a less expensive material and many color options. It completely replaced the iPhone X like the 5C did the 5, and really parallels the 5C in almost every way imaginable, except, the XR is actually good, and at a fair price point. But I digress. Let's take a step back here and look at the design of the iPhone 5C. After all, that's what Apple put the most emphasis on back in 2013. And honestly, the 5C, in my opinion, is a really slick looking device. It might not be as premium feeling as the iPhone 5 or 5S, but the polycarbonate plastic feels good in the hand, and the device itself just looks good. Again, there's a fair few colors to choose from, specifically being green, blue, yellow, pink, and white, and so there's kind of something for everyone. The back of the phone might not be made of materials typical from Apple, but the general design is sleek and I honestly like it. On the front of the phone we have black bezels and the old home button. This phone didn't have Touch ID and was actually the last iPhone not to have it, so it certainly hasn't aged well in that department. If you want security, you'll have to put in your passcode the old-fashioned way, which is a pain, by the way. I think we too easily forget how much biometrics have made our lives easier with these smart devices. On the bottom of the phone we have the lightning port and headphone jack. Beside the plastic headphone jack and old home button, this iPhone doesn't look too radically different from iPhones as recent as the 8. It shipped with iOS 7, the first iteration of software with the flat design we still mostly have to this day, and was really marketed towards the artsy type of people, if you want to call it that. The 5C's design might have been an issue for a lot of people, but it also attracted others who appreciated the different colors. In the very least, it gave you a phone that stood out from the crowd and would certainly catch the attention of others, at least at first, until these things became a dime a dozen because Apple manufactured way too many and couldn't sell them fast enough to keep up with the supply. The display of the 5C looks pretty good. This is a small phone to be sure at only 4 inches, but the Retina display keeps everything looking clean and crisp with no visible pixels. There's not a whole lot to complain about here other than, again, it is fairly small. Going to this phone from my XS isn't too bad software wise, but the small screen makes things feel cramped in comparison. But hey, we were all used to this back in 2013, and I can't fault the phone for that. I actually owned this phone, well, not this one, but another blue 5C that looked just like it back in 2014. I love that phone, I bought it myself, and so it's safe to say that I do find this device nostalgic. So keep in mind that I'm seeing this device through rose-tinted glasses, although then again I've mostly been criticizing the 5C, but oh well. Moving to the camera, we can see another department in which the 5C has aged. Not that it's really horrible, but it's certainly worse than what we've come to expect from a phone nowadays. The sensor has 8 megapixels and can shoot up to 1080p video, and honestly the results aren't too bad. I'll put them up in a moment, but it's fair to say the 5C has the capability to take nice pictures in good lighting, and it's fairly acceptable for casual use. The selfie camera, on the other hand, isn't so great with only 1.2 megapixels. No one wants to see a selfie taken from the iPhone 5C, much less this selfie for me, so let's just move on and put up some photos and videos for you to see for yourself. This is being filmed on the iPhone 5C in 1080p at 30 frames per second. And it doesn't look amazing, but it's not awful either. The battery life of the iPhone 5C is going to be a weak point in 2019, considering most of these phones have been used quite a bit over their lifetime. Batteries degrade, and they weren't huge to begin with at 1,510 milliamp hours. You'll be lucky to get a full day's use, unless yours has only been lightly used over the years, and even then you might have some troubles. You could always replace the battery in one of these if you want to go through that trouble. They're really not that expensive on eBay, and as far as I know, it's not too hard to do. The iPhone 5C's biggest failing point, in my opinion, is the internal hardware. While the exterior of the phone does leave some to be desired, in all fairness, it was meant to be a budget option to the 5S. It wasn't, at only $100 cheaper, but it was meant to be. The problem is that the 5C has only Apple's A6 chipset, the same processor found in the iPhone 5. The 5C does have a full gigabyte of RAM, which immensely helped longevity, but it was no better than its predecessor, and as a result, there was really no point of Apple selling it except for a cash grab. It was much cheaper for them to make it than the iPhone 5, so when the 5S came out, they discontinued the 5 completely and sold the 5C instead. I would assume the 5 probably wasn't much cheaper to produce than the iPhone 5S, and it wasn't worth it for Apple to keep selling it, so they needed a replacement. Similar to how Apple needed the XR to replace the 10, but what the XR has is the same processor as the XS, just with a lower quality display and overall build quality. If you buy a XR, you're still going to get the most performance possible out of an iPhone, but this wasn't the case with the 5C. That would have been okay, but the phone was just too darn expensive. The 5C was just overall a complete mess. An actually good idea, just terribly executed. The XR is the 5C done right, another video I've done, and the 5C's sales reflected this fact. But this video is supposed to be more focused on how the phone holds up in 2019, and I'm getting off track. The truth is, it's really not that bad. The 5C is decently fast on iOS 10, just like the 5, more specifically iOS 10.3.3, the latest version of iOS available for the 5 and 5C, and as a result of this, the 5C can actually download the majority of most current versions of apps, although it'll likely lose this ability come iOS 13. At the moment, however, apps like YouTube and Snapchat and Instagram require at least iOS 10, making the 5C actually feel fairly modern, although not all apps still support iOS 10 devices, so while you can download the latest compatible version, you're otherwise fresh out of luck for apps like Twitter. But again, there are a lot available, including YouTube, so yes, you can use YouTube in dark mode with your 4-inch iPhone 5C. This alone essentially makes it worth buying in 2019. I jest, but if you're somehow still stuck on this phone, you're probably doing okay, except for maybe that battery life. But the 5C doesn't really perform poorly, even today, despite its rocky history. After all, it's essentially the iPhone 5 in a plastic shell. Plus, these things are super easy to jailbreak now, which is really nice. If you have one of these still kicking around, it'll work just fine as a backup phone in case your current one breaks, or it could even work for a younger child's first phone. Now, if you actually want an iPhone 5C for whatever reason in 2019, they're pretty darn cheap on eBay. You can find them for under $50 if you look around pretty darn easily, and I mean, for that, they're not a horrible backup phone or whatever you need. Just make sure you get a model with more than 8 gigabytes. The iPhone 5C came in either 8, 16, or 32 gigabyte iterations, and 8 was just not enough. It wasn't enough in 2013, and it definitely isn't enough now. I was always really disappointed that Apple was selling the 8 gig models, but unfortunately that's just what happened. But again, I mean, under $50, usually around 35-ish for a 16 gig model, isn't horrible. What are you gonna use it for? I don't know, maybe you want a device for music? I mean, it does have a headphone jack, or whatever, but at least it's not outrageously priced anymore. Too bad it wasn't priced fairly when it was originally released. The iPhone 5C was my phone when I was 14, and it was the first iPhone I bought myself. I have fond memories of it, and it's nice to see that despite the many issues surrounding its launch, the actual hardware has held up nicely 6 years later. It won't go down as the best iPhone in history, but at least it's been consistently reliable throughout its life, and hasn't given the actual users much to complain about. And with that, I think I'm gonna end this video here. Did you ever own the iPhone 5C? Did you ever want one? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this video interesting, or maybe even helpful, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more content just like this. You can follow me over on Twitter and Instagram at 91_tech if you want to keep up with my boring life. And with that all being said, I'm Josh from 91tech, and I will see you all next time.